On the court or in the markets, performance is everything. That's why Anzo Capital is helping to power your trading game. Now official partner of the Phoenix Suns.
Hello there, traders. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is John, Senior Market Analyst at Anzo Capital. I'm going to show you today how to break down a chart like a professional. But before I start, if you could drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, make sure that the mic is all working, please. That would be a great help. So what are we going to learn today? I'm going to teach you how to break down a chart so that your charts are essentially bomb-proof. And this is such an important thing to master and to understand. And it's honestly probably the first thing that people go and try and master initially is the technical analysis side of things. And they try and break down charts and then they then try and create a strategy around those charts. And the important thing is that technical analysis has been around for years. There's been all sorts of books created around technical analysis and charting and how charting can help you, create wealth and income from trading X, Y, and Z. But you have to do it right. You have to get the basic fundamentals right when it comes to charting and comes to building those technical analysis. And I'm going to help you do that today. I'm going to break down how I have learned from my mentors that used to be hedge fund managers, X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to show you how they do it. We're going to do it on MetaTrader. MetaTrader is our preferred platform here at Anzo Capital. So I'm going to break it down on MT5, but it can be translated across multiple different platforms. You don't just have to do MT5, but obviously this is our preferred method. So I'm going to show you how and why we do certain things. I'm also going to show you how it can translate across different assets and different markets as well. So let's dive straight in. We're going to go for and break down a particular chart today. Now I'm going to start on a really easy chart. So here you can see my Bitcoin chart, okay? And I'm going to say this is easy because there's a few guidelines that we need to follow first before we kind of go through and master anything. So let me get a pen tool up first because there are some things and some questions that I like to sort of answer when I try and do this. And ultimately, technical analysis for me is something that I first developed in my own personal trading. It was the first thing I went to. And the reason why it's so popular and is easy to kind of come into is because it's there, it's physical, it's tangible. You can see price, you can see what's happened in the past, and you can then make a decision-making process off the back of it. Okay, so when I look at technical analysis, I look at it of if this happens, I do this. If this happens, I do something else, right? And that's what technical analysis is for me. It's about building into a framework of being able to break down a chart, then also understanding what the chart is telling us, and if we can then apply it within a framework, can it give us a little bit of an edge? That's it, right? But essentially, breaking down a chart is just understanding where price is. And one thing that I was always taught is if you are able to have your charts in order and be able to open up any chart and just explain within seconds what is going on, where price is, and tell a story about what price is going on, then you have a good understanding of where that market particularly is. You may not have like a fundamental bias or anything like that at that point, but at the same time, you've just got a good understanding of where price is. Imagine if you just opened a chart and you were like, well, I don't know why or where the support and resistance levels are, and then you go down to your lower time frame and you just start trading it because you see some kind of strategy setup, not realizing that you're trading around a very big level or trading around a level that has been physically seen rejected by a higher time frame price in the past. That's why it's important to have a sort of framework and have a technical analysis breakdown in. So there's a few sort of things that I like to do. First of all, you can see on the chart, I'm just going to leave these here for a second, but you can see I've got a few things on the chart. I'm just going to explain to you what these drawing tools are. So I've got a few horizontal tools, right? You can see those. I've also got trend line tools and I have labels, right? Now, unfortunately, on MetaTrader, MQL5, it can be pretty difficult to understand where you are in terms of price because they don't really give you an option to extend or make the axis any bigger. So unfortunately, that would be something that is why I use sort of labels, okay, and things like that, because I can just tell quickly whereabouts price is. You can also see that in these labels, they are always whole numbers. So I like to use whole, half, quarter, or three-quarter numbers. And the reason why that is because back in the day when trading was done in the pits, they would shout these numbers, right? And it's just what's known as a psychological number. So I like to try and when I place my sort of support and resistance in a certain place, I like to round it up or round it down to the nearest whole, half, quarter, or three-quarter number. So what I mean by that is anything that ends in a 0, 75, 50, or 25. Okay, that's what we're going to be looking at today. So here we have a chart of Bitcoin. Okay, and we always want to start on higher time frames. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to follow a very simple framework. Okay, I might even type this out for us as we go along. Okay, so what I can do here is just right click, delete all arrows, and that's going to take all this off. And it's always good to do this at least once a month, because once you've done this and you've gone through this process, you don't necessarily need to update this as much as you expect to, right? But first of all, we're always going to start off on a monthly chart, okay? So I'm on a monthly chart of Bitcoin. The reason why I'm showing you Bitcoin is because we haven't got much data on Bitcoin, but also it's really just clear. So the first thing we want to do, there's some rules to this, okay? So let me just grab a text box tool, okay? So rule number 1 is we want to understand where the major highs and lows are, okay? So what do I mean by that? I'm looking for the extreme highs and lows. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go grab a horizontal line tool. I'm going to place my horizontal line at the extreme high of the chart. And I'm also going to grab it and put it down at the extreme low of the chart. Okay. Why is that? Well, let's just say you're trading on your 1 hour time frame, right? And you realize that price has come all the way up into a major extreme, a high that hasn't been seen in a very long time, or a low that hasn't been seen in a very long time. Then your decision making may be different at that point. Do you want to buy into that level? Do you want to sell into that level? Possibly on a very short term scale, but do you want to hold anything beyond that level? Possibly not. So it just gives you a little bit of an idea that, okay, well, this is my extreme level. Often extreme levels can be seen and can be rejected. Okay. So first of all, you want your major highs and lows put in using a horizontal line tool. Okay. The next one we're going to go through, so we'll just grab a text box again. And this one is a little bit controversial, but this is how I was taught. You want to see if there's any trend lines around, okay? And we always want to start on a monthly time frame first. And we're going to go do this as like a breakdown of monthly, weekly, daily, okay? Potentially even lower. So what I find interesting about this is, now, when I first started trading, I wasn't a huge believer in using trend lines and things like that. But I was taught when they are clear and obvious, it's almost like more people will be looking at it. So it holds a bit more weight to it. Okay. And an easy way of how we can do this is by using our crosshair tool. Right. So I've got my crosshair tool here. I can drag from the low and anchor it onto a certain point, and I can see, is there a trend line at that particular point? Okay. And what we need for a trend line really is what's known as an anchor and formation point. Okay. And this is how I was taught. So your anchor point is your start point, right? And your formation point is another high, right? So let's say price has come down, done this. Okay. What we can do is use a trend line tool, expand from that trend line to see if any other contacts has had, right? So do we have any tests at those lines? Now, ideally, the more tests, arguably the stronger the trend line, right? But we need a minimum of an anchor and a formation point when it comes to building out our trend lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a trend line from that swing low to that swing low. Okay. And I can see that, yes, it got respected here, but it also got broken through here. Okay. Is there any more? And this is the question. Is there any more? I'm always asking myself questions. Is there another one? Yes, there's one there. Great. So I'm going to add another trend line from that swing low to that swing low. So I've got multiple anchor and formation points now. Okay. So I can see that at some point, obviously the trend was very aggressive. Why? Because we've got one extended trend line here and then a second extended trend line getting higher. So when you have a higher trend line, that's what's known as an accelerated trend line. Okay. So it just tells us a little bit of a story about what's going on in price. So we can see that price has been in a very strong upward trend, but now it's breaking through that potential trend. Okay. Very simple. Very, very simple. We don't need to make it too difficult. The next thing we want to be looking for are major areas of support or resistance. Okay. So 3, we're going to be looking at support and resistance. Okay. So support and resistance is very, very important because it just tells us where price has been before. Now, how do we find it? How do we find it? So if we look at support and resistance is often a horizontal line. And what we are looking for is if price has kind of bounced off, maybe broken through, retested, it's just an area where price has touched multiple times. Okay. That's what we're looking for in this particular scenario. How do you find that? Again, grab your crosshair tool. We're going to start from the top right-hand side of the screen, and we're going to drag our crosshair down. And we're going to stop where we think there's a sort of crossing point for price. Okay. So I quite like this little area sort of down through here, right? A little bit of an area there. Why? Because I can see that we have a resistance zone here and a support zone in here. So what I like to do, instead of using a horizontal line, I just think it's just aesthetically pleasing to use a trend line. So I use a trend line, and what you want to do is you want to make sure that the properties are on this. Okay. If you go to parameters, you need to select array right. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is just kind of line this up to where we think it kind of incorporates the majority of those kind of support and resistance levels. So I can see there's a big sort of one through here. So I'm going to right click now, go back to properties and see where it's at. So I can see that this is 73,726. Great. Very close to the quarter number of 25, right? So that's what I'm going to put in. I'm going to put in that. So that is my monthly level of support and resistance. Now, I'm not going to add any more technical analysis on that now because that's pretty much it, right? We can see we have our major high, major low that we've put on the chart. We've spotted some trend lines, okay? And we've also highlighted support and resistance level. There's not really much more beyond that. We could argue that maybe there's one a little bit down through here because there's multiple touches, but remember, we're going to be going down the time frame, so it might become a little bit clearer. And I always say, always look for the clear and obvious. If it's not clear and obvious, don't bother with it. Okay, you want to look for always the clear and obvious support and resistance levels. So the next one, we're going to go down to the weekly chart. You can see our technical analysis is still there. We can refine it at this point, right? Or we can add certain elements too. Right, so got to follow the same process again. I don't need the major highs and lows now because we've already got that from our monthly chart. But what is the next step? The next step is to look for any kind of trend line patterns that have been placed in the chart. So I can see, obviously, there's a high here, right? There's a previous high here. There's a high here. So let's have a look at this one. So let's take the first high, for instance, and it's just good practice to do. I'm going to go down to the next anchor point, which is here, and I'm going to extend that out. Is that a good trend line? No, because you can see that it cuts through price action. So I don't really want to use this trend line in particular. However, let's go from this high instead. Can I extend that out? Well, yeah, that's a good trend line, I would say, because you've got anchor, formation point, and you had that little test in here where price was starting to stutter a little bit, right? It's not going through price action until this point, which again, tells a story about price. Is price going to reject these levels? Now, obviously, we've got these trend lines here as well, the monthly one. Now, what I like to do if I feel like they're not in use is just go back to the properties. Once selected, just untick ray right, click OK. So I've just kind of limited that one down. This one I feel is very important because obviously we had the anchor, formation point, retest of that, and then it's broken through that. So that could be a potential area where price wants to come and retest on the other side and potentially find some resistance this time. So again, now I'm going to go back to my trend line. I'm going to add this one onto here. Again, anchor formation, go back into the properties and just click ray right. Okay, boom, there we go. Now, I also like to see if there's any kind of a channel being built. Now, a channel is very easy to do. What you want to do is you want to select your trend line. You want to hit control, hit the middle of that box there, and just drag that down to the next low. You don't want to create a channel where you put it like this, because that's not how the channel has formed. The channel has formed by making lows, lower lows, and lower highs. So I'm going to put it on the next low. And then if that extends out and it hits into a potential point there, then it's a valid channel. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at there. So the market was creating this kind of downward trend here. It was making lower lows and lower highs. It broke through monthly support and has now climbed back above it. Again, see how I'm telling a story about price using price action. Okay, using trends, using trend lines. Okay, it's giving me the idea of what's going on, right? So let's do the same process again. We're going to grab our cursor, we're going to grab our tool here. We're going to start from the top right hand corner of the chart, and we're going to slowly move down, and we're going to stop when we feel like we come to a point where price has touched it multiple times. Okay, so as I drag through, boom, here, really good area of support and resistance, right? You've got this 10, 5, 70 area in here. So what I'm going to do is, again, apply my trend line. I'm going to come in, apply the trend line in here, get it to a place where you think is most clear and obvious. So for me, what I'm looking at right now is the fact that we've got this little area in here, right? Where you've got multiple touches of support and resistance. Let me just grab my pen tool again. So you've got resistance, resistance, all these kind of highs in here, support, support, and then the market broke down through that level. So to me, that is very significant. Prices are obviously been attracted to this area. It has rejected multiple times. So that is an area of potential interest for us. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, go to properties. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to the parameters tab. Again, we want to try and make sure that we are at least by a whole, quarter, half, or 3/4 number. So I can see that we're at 107,940. So I just feel like I could round that up to 108,000, to be honest. And we'll see how that changes on the chart, right? So let's go 108,000 and we'll click OK. And you can see it hasn't really moved. Great, fantastic. We've just rounded that up to a whole number. Now what I'd like to do now I'm on the weekly chart is apply these price labels. So again, just click near the line there, go into your properties, and all you're going to do is type in the same number. Okay. So now you've got sort of a clear picture of this level in here. Now, I also like to add zones in. I do like to add zones in, but I like to do that more towards the lower time frame just because it can make a chart a little bit messy. Okay. But here we are on this weekly chart. Now we start again. We grow from this line. Hit your middle of your mouse or your cursor, get it again, or you can just come up to that cursor tool there. Okay. I'm going to drag from this line and we're going to slowly move down and we're going to look for areas where the market has touched it multiple times, but in a clear and obvious way. Okay. So boom, I think here, right? Why do I think here? Well, I've got this touch in here, this touch in here, multiple touches through there. Okay. So around about this kind of $93,500 level, I would say. We could probably edge it up towards to the sort of 94. But again, once we dive into a lower time frame, there might be a good opportunity to see that. Now, just to make it super easy for ourselves, we can just select the old line. Make sure you grab from the middle of the line there, hold control and drag down. Okay, so it's around about this sort of area in here for me. Again, right click. Let's see what the parameters are saying. So yeah, like I said, 93,000. Let's go 500 on that. And we can refine it once we go down to the daily chart. Okay. Again, let's grab down. Let's just scroll down now and see if there's anything there. So, you know, around this potential area here, quite close to that monthly trend line that we put into place. But around this area here, around about that 82,000 sort of area is a nice little level where price is kind of getting a little bit stuck at the moment, quite interestingly as well. So again, I'm just going to double click, go into the middle box there, hit control, drag that down to that area down through there. You got all these multiple touches through here, this support touch in here, and now price is trading around that particular level. So if I just go in and edit this, so I might actually edit that up to, or edit it down a little bit to 250, click OK. Okay, so now you can see that again, it's just able to tell us a story about price. What is price action doing on this weekly time frame? Well, I can tell you that the market was in a downward trend. It recently broke through a monthly level of support or resistance and is now testing a weekly level of resistance. So you can start building that sort of language into your trading analysis. Okay, so it's always good. I was always taught to be a good analyst first, and that will flow into your trading habits. Okay, so again, because it's the weekly chart, I do like to add those levels in as well. So this one was, we can just double check. You can go into properties, make it super simple, and just control, copy, control paste. Okay, there we go. Double click, and then I can just double click again, control drag down to the next level down through here, which was that 8250 level. I think it was 81,250, wasn't it? I think. Let me have a look. 81,250, control C. Okay. Control V. There you go. Copy and paste. Easiest way to do it. Okay, so now I've built this picture of what's going on. So again, I like to do this and go down through my time frames now just to see how price is working. Again, right click, let's go down. Let's see if there's any more levels of interest. Quite like these lows in here around about that 66, 65,000 level as well. So again, just going to copy, paste that down just through here. Okay, it looks like a good level. You can see lots of touches around there most recently. So I'm going to go for 65K on that. Okay. Drag this down. Now, the first time you do this, it's going to be tedious. Okay. It's going to be tedious. Sometimes I think I've got to refresh my charts, and it is a little bit tedious to do. But once you have done it, you can lock this in place for a long time. And I'll show you how you can also do that. Again, just right click and we're going to follow all the way down until we come to a point of interest. I like those lows down through there as well. And again, just make sure that it's clear and obvious. We can see that there's 3 touches down through here. That is clear and obvious. And I'm just going to round that up, I think, to 500. Okay. Oops. 53,500. Okay. Control copy. Move that down there. 63,500. All right. So again, look, we've built a big picture on this chart. We can start telling stories around this. We can say to ourselves, well, what if price breaks through that weekly area of resistance? Well, the likelihood is that we could go and test the next area of resistance. What is that resistance? It's the $93,500 level. You can start talking like you are a professional. You're looking at a chart. You can tell us about a story. If anyone was to say to you the next day, tell me where the price of Bitcoin is, you can just open your chart and go, well, we're approaching the $81,250 level. Price has recently broken out of that channel support or channel resistance. And I'm looking to see if price is going to react around this level or is there a strong change of trend? Boom, easy. Right, let's go to the daily chart then. So now you can see our levels are looking pretty good. We can zoom out a little bit. You can see that we've got nice rejections. Some of them might have to be refined. I can see that this one here in particular needs to be refined down to that low there. But you can see actually, in terms of levels, I think we've done pretty decent. We might be able to add a few more in. I can see actually, if I, again, think about it, let's put in some decent levels of support and resistance. Now, this monthly one here is starting to get in the way a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put visualization. I'm just going to turn that down and just only make sure that that shows on the weekly and the monthly chart for now. Okay. So that's something you can do as well, just to kind of help with the amount of analysis that can be on your charts. But, you know, I'm looking at this and I can say to myself quite easily, you know, price is trying to break through that area there. I can see I've got a 50 moving average on the chart as well. I can say price is trading above the 50 moving average, which can be a bullish signal and things like that. So again, let's just go again, right click from the start. You can see we've got these levels on here. Do I need to adjust them slightly? No, I think we're pretty good. The only one I could say we could probably add in is around this area here, which is around about that 99K, maybe even the 100K level there. You can see psychological number. We've had multiple rejections in and around this point as well. So I think I'm going to add in that level in there and just pop that as 100K. Okay, really easy. You know, just make sure that it looks relatively easy to spot. You know, if it's easy to spot, then guess what? Everybody else is probably looking at those levels too. Now, support and resistance can be a funny one. Like, you know, if I was to blank out this chart and just draw a bunch of random lines and then turn it back on, you'll probably think, oh, he's just an absolute wizard in what he does. That's not the truth. It's just that the market can react to certain levels. And if you draw enough lines on, you can find levels everywhere. Okay, so you've got to be a little bit careful when it comes to that. But what we want to do is just to make sure that we can build a clear picture and a clear story. Now, to me, that's pretty good. I would say that we've got a very good sense of where price is at right now. You know, I could say to you, well, we're at the $81,250 level on Bitcoin. We're holding at this level at the moment. If price were to break out of those highs here, it may use that level as an area of support for a potential continuation to the upside. Where is some likely area of resistance? Up at $93,500. And if it breaks through there, it could potentially even reach the $100,000 level. However, if we hold at 81,250, there's a good potential that price might retrace back to another area or zone of support, with the monthly level being around about that $73,000 level. So you can see how you can start building in a picture of what this looks like now. So remember, let's go back to that monthly chart. What did we do? We went in and put in our major swing highs and lows. So what does that look like? We put in this major high in here, this major swing low in here. Okay. What did we do then? We went and looked at, is there any trend lines? Are there any significant trend lines that could tell us a story about price? And yes, there was, right? We found that. Support and resistance. Where is the support and resistance levels, right? We went down, we grabbed our crosshair tool, and we started from the top right and we moved down until we found an area where price touches multiple different levels, and we applied those. Okay. So going back down, then we went to a weekly chart. What did we do on the weekly chart? First thing we did is we tried to spot any significant trend lines. We found this trend line down through here, which we then copied to make a channel, right? Super, super simple. We then used our crosshair tool, started from the top, worked our way down to find any other levels. So we found this $108,000 level. Sorry, we moved down and we found this level at the $93,500 level, and we found this $81,250 level, as well as this $65,000 level. And you can see as I'm hovering over these lines, it tells you what time frame you've applied that on. So that's a monthly trend line, that's a weekly trend line, weekly trend line, weekly trend line. Now, this was our daily. So when we went to the daily chart, what did we spot? Well, we spotted this $100,000 level where price tested multiple times. Okay. Now, like I said, I like to treat these as zones. So a lot of the times on my charts, you'll see something like this, where you just drag a little rectangle over the box, because I don't necessarily believe that one particular level is ever going to be sort of, perfect. I don't believe the markets are perfect. That's where you see, price react just before the level, or break through it and then react, or react at the level. It's not a perfect market, right? Markets aren't perfect. So they have these breakout moments. Now, like I said, you can refine these levels if you really want to. You might think that this level here, this $93,500 level, is not important. Well, then you can take it away. You don't have to use it. But at the end of the day, it's your discretion about what you want to try and do. You may want to add others in. You may think, okay, well, if I go down to a 4-hour time frame now, how do I view price action? How do I view price? I can see for some reason I've got a trend line in here. But this is where you could be like, okay, well, look at this. The 4-hour chart is in a strong upward trend. Are there any trend lines? You could say, okay, well, let me try this swing low to there. Okay, that's a potential area, maybe. If I do this one to here, okay, that was a trend line, because you can see it has anchor formation, and as you've expanded it out on those lines, you have a touch 1 point. So that was a trend line. Okay, here, swing low, the swing low there, possibly not a trend line. Okay, because it just cuts through the middle of price. But again, trend lines are very subjective. You want to look for the most clear and obvious ones. If there is a clear and obvious trend line, then it's probably a good trend line. Okay. Are there any other support and resistance levels? So again, just grab at the right side of the screen. You can see, well, actually, we are reacting around this 81,250 level, but on this particular chart, here are the 4-hour highs. Okay, so you're just kind of diving in a little bit more each time, and you can try and start building that picture. Again, I quite like the idea of this level in here. Very easy to spot. You've got resistance, support. Could that be potentially support? And look, it's right by a psychological number of 79,500. So again, you can start just building these little things in. And if you don't want too many lines on your chart, just come to the visualization tab, click on all time frames, and you can change it. So if this is a 4-hour chart, maybe you don't want to see it on your daily, maybe you don't want to see it on the weekly, maybe you don't want to see it on the monthly chart. So you can just drop that in there as well. Put a little price label around it. So 79,500. Okay, again, visualization, you just want to show it on the hourly charts or whatever. There you go. Let's just change the properties on that one, 79,500. And I'll show you how to do this on another chart as well. There we go. Boom. Add that in. Great. Now you can see, okay, well, I can see where price has rejected. It found resistance in here. It's now found support at these levels. Now we're starting to see a bit of a break to the upside. Can we break above the, didn't mean to do that. Can we now break above that monthly area of resistance. Okay. Now, obviously, then you can start building and adding in fundamental techniques to this as well. This is where I think technical analysis really does thrive. Technical analysis for me is almost like a conditionary tool, as well as being used to trade particular strategies. Okay, so that is how you can break down a chart like a professional. You are looking at this in major highs and lows, trend lines, support and resistance. I deleted all the arrows on accident, but there you go. Now, one thing you can do is obviously you can save that profile. So if I just right click here, templates, I have sort of my main templates already kind of saved up. So if you clicked onto templates and save template, you can save all that. So you can see I've already got one there, and this is my Bitcoin one in here, right? So you can see I've got some levels already punched in. Now, I haven't got as many levels as what I just did for you guys because I hadn't updated my Bitcoin chart in a little while. And you can see my technical analysis is ever so slightly different. Okay. But there's still, those levels still matter. You've got that $100,000 level in there. You can see I've actually drawn in these kind of counter trend channels as well. This trend line support through here, for instance. So you can see, like, as you get better at this and as you do it more and more and more, you can start finding a bit more levels that just matter to you. So let's move on to another chart then. Let's go on to euro dollar. Again, look at this. You can see I've got a sort of map of what's going on in terms of what's happening in the markets. I can automatically tell you a story that the 1.118 handle on euro dollar is super important. You can see how many times it's rejected this level, rejection. So I would have known that if price was coming into this zone here, that I didn't want to be a buyer of that trend anymore. I wanted to look for potential sell opportunities. We had a minor support area through there at the 117.50, which we spoke about in the past, but we also had a look at 116.50 previously in previous technical analysis as well. So again, you can follow the exact same process. So let me just delete some of these off, delete all arrows. And then I'm just going to select everything in here. And we're just going to put on some fresh technical analysis. Again, like I said, this is good to do at least once a month, I would say. And then you don't have to really do it again, or you just update it as you go, right? So first thing you want to do is make sure you go up to that monthly time frame, right? And you can see this is the monthly chart of euro dollar. Now I can see the highest high point for me on this particular chart right now is all the way up here. And I don't really refine the highest high point or the low, because I want them to be sort of bang on or close to the extremes as possible. So there's the extreme high, there's the extreme low. Now I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. Can we spot any particular trend line? So, from here, there's an anchor, there's a formation point in the future. That could be a potential trend line. So that low to that low there. I'm just going to pop that on. Can I see another one where I've got that low to that low, extend that out? Potentially there's one forming here at the moment. Okay. Are there any more? So you've got that one to there, right? Very distinct, I would say, trend line from going from those two highs. So you have anchor formation, test one. And that's about it, I would say. Okay. I'm not 100% sure on this one. And if you're not 100% sure, guess what? You can always delete it. But I'm going to leave it in for now, just in case. And then the next thing is what? You right click, you move down, you try and find those kind of touch points in price. I can see there's a kind of like highs and lows that have been touched over in and around this area here. So there might be a little bit of sort of support and resistance around this area here. Okay. I've got the touch sensitivity on. So, okay, I would say around about that 1.2750. Simple. There you go. Boom. Right click, move down. So we've got this significant high in here. I'd actually say the zone's probably a little bit more to answer that 1.23 handle, considering it's got more of those kind of touch points in there. You've got support, resistance, resistance, resistance. So I would probably go more towards that 1.23 with this one, to be honest. 1.23, 1.23. Again, just rounding it up to that whole, half, or quarter number. And then from here, just make your way down. You can come up with a funny song joke there. But again, quite like this level, right? You can see resistance, resistance, support, support, bit of a chop through there, resistance, bit of chop, but support in general. So I'm going to right click on that one. Parameters. So we're looking at probably 15.25. That's the closest. Right. There we go. Right click, move our way down. Okay. Seems to be a bit of a level in there, I would say. I like these highs in here, for instance. 1, 2, 3, touch, break, retest on the other side, continuation. So that would be a nice level of interest for me as well. So I'm going to go 111.50 on there. And again, right click, just scroll down where you think the most obvious levels are. So again, quite like those lows in here, those lows around that point in here as well. So I'm going to pop a line down here for myself. Okay. And that's going to be, let's just round that up to 500. There we go. Boom. Simple, really easy. We don't have to over complicate what's going on, right? That to me is super simple. Go to the weekly chart now. Can we refine any of those levels? Are there any other levels that we can apply? So let's have a look at the trend line that we placed. Does that trend line look any good? It kind of does. I mean, we can see we have this sort of bottom in here and a retest in there that was clearly rejected on the way up. Do I think it's strong? Probably not. So I'm going to delete that level in there. I can actually see, look, we've got some really strong levels of support and resistance here just from that level. Obviously, we could probably add in this level up here now, which is that sort of 118 handle, which we were talking about before. So I'm going to just pop in a line, pop a line through there as well. I'm going to right click on that, go to parameters. I'm going to put in that 118 handle level because we can clearly see price has been rejecting in and around that area. You know, could I make this level a bit more refined? I could possibly come down to the 114.75. That kind of incorporates a little bit. I like the 115 as well. So maybe we change that to 115. Okay, bring that down a little bit. You can see as I've done that, it's incorporated that high, that low, these highs in here, and all that kind of good stuff. All right. So yeah, actually, I think from the weekly perspective, there's not really much more to add or to change, right? Let's go down to a daily chart. So obviously, daily chart's going to look a little bit different because we're close to these sort of levels. So I can see clearly there's a decent level around here, right? Market has been respecting this sort of 116.75, 116.50 level, and that's exactly why I had it in place in the first place, is because the market has obviously used that area as resistance. Now I do like recency when it comes to support and resistance as well. So when I'm on the like daily time frames and the 4-hour time frames, I'm always looking to look at what's happening sort of most recently as well. Don't want to go all the way back here and say, okay, look, there was a touch there, touch there, touch there, touch there, but since then it's not really been that great. So I do like an element of recency bias as well with that as well. I actually think maybe I should extend it up to the 75. But again, I do use kind of like a zone in my trading. Okay. Boom. There you go. And again, remember, you can add labels to these as well. I do like to go through and add labels in. I usually kind of wait till the end to do that, just because that is the most sort of tedious part of it all. But look, you're just building a story about what is going on in the charts. And now every time I open these charts, I know exactly where price is. I know where exactly price is trading to and where it could potentially do. I can also start building a what if scenario. As a trader, that is super important. It's almost like, okay, well, let's say I want to be short euro dollar. Let's say I believe the dollar is getting stronger. And I can say to myself, well, price action at the moment or the conditions around this market, does that make me want to go short on this particular time frame? No. Why? Because I'm approaching key support of 116.75. Why is that not good? Well, because I know in the past the market has used this zone as a turning point. It was used as resistance going into support. So if I was to short here, where's my safe stop? Well, it's not until above those highs there. Where's my initial resistance point or my first point of contact? It's this 116.75. So why do I want to short there? So now you're saying to yourself, okay, well, I want to see, if I want to see further downside, well, I need price to break through. And then if it breaks through there, I can look for a potential continuation to the downside. Okay, you're starting to build in this framework of if then scenarios. If price rejects here and moves back up to the highs, but I still believe that euro dollar is going down, then guess what? I'm going to be looking at the 118 level as a level of resistance. I'm going to be looking to potentially short from that zone up there. Okay, back down into my support. So it's just very important to understand that support and resistance, although yes, it is a very subjective thing, if you can be very clear in what you want to see, then there's opportunities for you to start building in a good process into the markets. Okay, so remember what we've done. Let's go back to that monthly chart. I'm going to zoom right out. That's what we do. We want to make sure we've got all the information on the chart. What did we do? We applied the extreme swing high, the extreme swing low for the chart and the time frame that you're on. What did we do then? We went and took our trend line tool and our cursor and we looked for potential trend lines within the market. Okay, ones that we think are still relevant now. The second thing we did was we started from the top right of our chart and we scrolled all the way down till we found touch points, and then we looked to apply those horizontal lines and then rounded them up to the whole half, quarter, two, or 3/4 number. Then what we did was we went down. We went to a weekly chart, applied the exact same process, refined a couple of the levels even. Then we went down to a daily chart and did the exact same thing and refined those levels as well. So the next thing you can do, obviously, is you can right click, come down to your template, save template, and keep it as that. So you can see I've already got a euro dollar one in there, which is there. So you can see I've got an extra level at 117.50. If I go to the 4-hour level, it was important on this 4-hour chart. You can see the market was pushing through that level, trying to reject it. Okay. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I actually think this level is a bit redundant now. So again, all I'm left with really is that 118 level and that 116.50, 116.75 handle. Okay, so that's how you can break down a chart. I like the idea of seeing, following a process, making sure that you can spot these kind of clear, defined levels of highs and lows, and then go through and create a trading strategy around it. This is a big part of my WCS method. Okay. It's about finding the why first, finding where those markets and trends can occur. Then it's about the conditions. This is where technical analysis really plays a big part for me, is finding the conditions around the market and then applying a strategy. What do I mean by that? Well, that is just basically, do the conditions match what I am seeing from the why? So a really good example of this, if I just go to my pound pairs here, okay, let's go to pound Aussie. I've been pretty aggressively short pound Aussie since we broke out of this sort of trend line here. But, I can't show you that because let's just bring it in on TradingView. So again, this kind of corresponds over to TradingView as well. You can see I've got the exact same sort of technical analysis on here as well. But look, I've been aggressively short pound Aussie. Why? Because the Australian dollar, the Aussie interest rates have been climbing. Pounds have been remained on hold. So there is an interest rate difference potential play there. as well as growth in the UK has been very stagnant. So the likelihood of a hike from the central bank is very, very low. That's a why. Then you can add the conditions into it, right? So what do I mean by that is, well, is the market in a downward trend? Yes. So then I can go to a strategy. How do I apply my strategy and things like that? And you can see that in a previous webinar that we've done in the past. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. Thank you for watching. This was how to break the chart down like a professional. I've got some videos coming up soon that I hope you're going to really enjoy. And I will speak to you very, very soon.
On the court or in the markets, performance is everything. That's why Anzo Capital is helping to power your trading game. Now official partner of the Phoenix Suns.